Tennessee Volunteer edge rusher James Pearce Jr. is a perfect prospect pairing for the Carolina Panthers if they bypass adding a quarterback in the 2025 NFL Draft. He can replace Brian Burns as their number one edge rusher for the foreseeable future. We'll discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydays. And you know, I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duel that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. DP, today's show, man, we picking a perfect pair, right? We're picking the NFL team, we picking a draft prospect, and we saying that this is a mutually beneficial situation. We need to make this happen. We need to see this happen in a 2025 NFL draft. Then we're going to talk about the biggest draft storylines, right? Where are we now? What are some of the biggest headlines and trends that we are seeing? And then we're going to wrap this thing up with my favorite segment, and my name's not on it, Dames Dudes. DP, we talk about Dames Dudes. We're going to have some fun. We're going to put you on the hot seat. Let's get this show started with Perfect Pair.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. At the end of yesterday's show, Keith, I teased I'm taking James Pearce Jr., the Tennessee Volunteer star edge rusher, and I'm sending him and I'm throwing him into the NFC. I think he'll be a perfect pairing for the Carolina Panthers. This is albeit if whether it's Bryce Young or a veteran at quarterback next year, heck, they could try to go get Jameis Winston. They could decide to kick the tires on Joe Flacco and just bring a veteran in and wait for the 2026 NFL draft class. See if you can get an Arch Manning or Nico Iamaleava or one of those guys, right? And just wait. DJ Lagway, whoever. Like, you try and see if you can wait. But nonetheless, they might try to kick the can down the road just a year or so with another quarterback. If they were to do that, this team defensively has not been good in 2024. And anybody that pay attention to their roster changes and know what they've done knew that this was coming, right? You lose Derek Brown early in the season for the rest of the season. You trade away Brian Burns before the draft or during the offseason. J.C. Horn has been battling injuries, and you get rid of Frank. You let Frankie Louvu walk. You let Jeremy Chin walk. They lost a lot of guys. So understanding that their main thing right now is like when Derek Brown comes back healthy, hey, you try and re-sign a Jadeveon Clowney and keep his veteran leadership and his ability in the locker room. For me, losing Brian Burns was big, mainly because you don't have that go-to edge rusher, that speed, that explosiveness, that bend off the edge to pair with a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. James Pearce Jr. to me is the perfect situation. That's the perfect situation for him. He gives the Carolina Panthers their second version of Brian Burns as a pass rusher, right? When you look at his ability to work the outside edge, he's a quick first step guy. He can bend around the edge. He's still developing, similar to Brian Burns as a player coming into the league, developing as a run defender. 6'5", he's about 235, 240. I think he's about 240 right now on the season. 29 pressures, 2 QB hits, 5 sacks, and 3 of his 5 sacks have come in his last 2 games. You know what I mean? And he has a forced fumble on the season. This is a guy who's starting to pick it up and pick up a little bit of steam. And I think if you're the Carolina Panthers, like I said, whether it's Bryce Young, you feel comfortable with Bryce at quarterback, or you go get you a veteran option. Maybe you go back and kick the tires on Sam Darnold again and give him a 2-year deal and see if he can reclaim and keep that fire that he has in Minnesota and see if he fits with Dave Canales. If you're able to do that and you don't have to go quarterback, then great. And you could trade down. You could trade down with a team that needs a quarterback. You could be the Chicago Bears, gathering more picks, rebuilding your team. And as we always say, get the roster ready for a new quarterback.
Yeah, DP, I'll say this. I like the situation. I just don't think it's going to happen because it's too much like the right thing, right? For the
Yeah,
Carolina Panthers, right? It makes too much sense for them. It just seems like they're actively like navigating the process of how do we even get worse, right? Like what do we do strategically? Just the moves they made, right? Like when you do that timeline of stuff they've done, it's like, how did this make sense?
yeah,
After you made that first move, you did that, right? So makes no sense at all. But I do like the parent, right? James Pearce Jr. DP, I'm gonna look at the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm gonna go with I have two, like I think one of those top two running backs we've been talking about, Ashton Genty or Amari Captain, either one to the San Francisco 49ers. And the reason I'm saying it is that obviously Christian McCaffrey has been hurt, right? And when you look at their record, right? They're floating around 500 as a team. And I think that as they transition, because you feel like last year's draft, and I know we talked about this at the draft, right? When we did the 49ers video, DP, is that like it seems like they're transitioning to like a new wave, right? That like
yeah,
Jacob Cowan is coming in to replace one of those guys, right? And then Ricky Pearsall is coming to replace one of those guys. And I like, talking about the wide receivers, but looking at the running back position, they need a young, dynamic running back for like Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if he has 5 more years. He may be closer to 2, right? But if that's the case, then what is Brock Purdy going to do, right? Because you don't want to bump against the threshold of Brock Purdy. I think he has 1 more year till he's going to want to be paid. And then so you don't want to pay him all of that money. And then now you don't have the same surrounding resources for him. And then now you got a bad version of Brock Purdy, but he's costing you $60 million, right? So I think they need to invest into that position and just be aggressive. Like, hey, if you believe in the running backs, and San Francisco 49ers clearly do, that's why they traded for Christian McCaffrey, go get a guy to back him up that can be dynamic also.
yeah. I think with them, and I don't mind it at all. Especially, I think the better scheme fit would be Genty because he's that one cut true runner.
Mhm.
Where I look at Hampton more of a gap scheme, vertical shoulder square guy. Man, you put Genty in this offense with the blocking that they have, Kyle Shanahan and George Kittle. Maybe you still have Debo and whatever. Like that is a listen. Genty would feel like a brand new man knowing that, man, I do not have to I don't have to carry the entire offense on my
Yep.
shoulders and everything. I think that would be a great fit. And like you said, with Brock still on his rookie deal, which is crazy because he was drafted in 2022. He was a 23-year-old draft pick. He played a lot of ball. He has 1 more year. He has this year, 2024, and then 2025. He's actually still under contract. He'll be 26 years old, but you know how these agents are. I expect him to try and go into this offseason and say, listen,
Well, yeah,
especially
that's what I'm
after
saying.
how
Yeah,
this season works.
it's going to happen this offseason because I think
Mm-hmm.
even with Jordan Love and a couple of those guys, right? 'Cause we've seen a lot of quarterbacks
Yeah,
get paid last offseason, and a couple of them still had like another year to
another
play,
year
right?
or
Like
two.
they
Yeah.
didn't wait till the last year, they got it done. So
Mm-mm.
this will probably be the offseason. I mean, the agents, they're trying to do what they need to do. They're like, hey, let's get to the table
Exactly.
as
They,
soon as
they they try
possible.
to get their
Yeah,
3%. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You gotta get their 3%. Like, listen, let's go ahead and cash it in because you don't want to potentially lose some guys like Brandon Ayuk doesn't start the season next year. He's
yeah.
on
That you
pup
got
and
ACL. What I
McCaffrey's
don't.
gone, and now you're telling Brock, which they're doing that now, and that's why the team is kind of floating around 500. Is you're telling Brock to be a truck, and Brock
Uh-huh.
isn't a truck. He's more of that hitch and things like that. So you want to give him the weapons needed, and Ashton Genty will be a great fit to this offense. And I mean, and I know some Niner fans, who, especially the ones who don't like paying running backs, be like, listen, or drafting the running back in the first round. We got Jordan Mason. No, don't get me wrong. I like Jordan Mason a lot, but maybe now you if you drafted Genty, you have Jordan Mason and Genty. You have a two-headed rushing attack, things like that. You still got Isaac Urendo who can do different things for you. At the end of the day, you just want to make the job a little bit easier on Brock Purdy. I think that's a good fit for Genty overall.
Yeah, and we have to be honest, right? Like there's levels to this, right? Like because we do it for wide receivers, DP. Like we don't say, oh, replace Jamar Chase with any wide receiver that's on a roster that's decent, right? Like we don't do that. Like we don't say replace Jamar Chase. Well, we got DJ Chark. Like no, and it's like it's the same thing for running backs. Like there's levels to this. Like yeah, you have running backs on your roster that are decent, but are they Christian McCaffrey esque, right? Are they
Right.
Saquon Barkley esque? Yeah, you got running backs that's decent, but it's still levels to this as far as talent wise. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. And coming up next, we are talking biggest draft storylines, right? What are we paying attention to? What trends are popping up? We're gonna talk about that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. But guys, it's not just your favorite teams. It's also your favorite events, concerts, comedy shows. You name it, Gametime has it. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Some of the other things that I love about Gametime, they show the seat views for all the seats in the venue. So before you buy your tickets, you know what vantage point you will have. Also, they have lowest price guarantees, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you placed your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Guys, you don't want to pass up on a deal like this. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Biggest draft storylines, Keith. I'm going to the linebacker class for the 2025 NFL draft, and I feel like this linebacker class is underappreciated. First of all, linebackers are underappreciated, right? They are the running backs of the defense. You know what I mean? Nobody feels like you need them until you don't have one or have two. You know what I mean? But when I look at this class, I feel like this is a pretty decent class with a variety of skill sets, sizes, athletic profiles. Whether you're talking about Danny Stutzman, the 6'4", 240 off-ball backer at Oklahoma, a guy who, has floated around the defense, has a nose for the football, a tackling machine. Jihad Campbell over at Alabama, 6'3", 245, a guy who is athletic. He has a downhill burst, a really good blitzer. You know what I mean? He could drop off in the coverage, but he truthfully looks like he could play some stand-up edge rusher as well. Of course, Jalen Walker, depends on how you kind of look at him. If you're a team that don't need him to rush the pass and you want him to develop fully as an off-ball backer, hey, more power to you, right? But at the end of the day, he's that hybrid guy that can do both. Lander Barton from Utah, Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame, Barrett Carter from over there from Clemson. There's a lot of different, you're talking about the Iowa parent, Jay Higgins, and everything. Nicholas Martin at Ohio State, John Dumas Johnson, who transferred from Georgia to Kentucky. This is a talented group. Like I said, skill versatility is there. Guys that can wear different hats and do different things in for a defense, right, guys? Some guys who are odd front defense, 3-4 off-ball backers. Some guys who are 4-3 backers. Some guys who are going to be playing better downhill, attacking the line of scrimmage, stuffing the run. Some guys are going to be purely, hey, my value is going to be on third downs, mostly because I'm so good from an athletic standpoint, drop it off in the coverage like a Barrett Carter, reading route concepts, getting to his spots, taking away throwing lanes, different things like that. I just look at this class. I feel like it's underappreciated, mainly because I don't know how many. I've not seen many discussions on social media from the draft community about the linebacker class. I'm like, hey guys, I think it's time for us to wake up and start looking at these off-ball backers, because guess what? No matter how good your D-line is in the NFL, if your linebacker play isn't good, it doesn't matter. Running backs gonna find their lanes, and if those guys aren't back there in the second level to kind of clog some of that stuff up, drop off in the coverage, and make things a little difficult. Hey, I'm just saying, Peyton Wilson playing well, Adrian Cooper playing well when they're on the field. I think off-ball backers are necessary.
Yeah, and you know exactly how I feel about it, DP. Like I think it's insane when we get into the conversations of devaluing any position, right? Like, oh,
Right.
what do you mean? It's one of the 11, and we're gonna say it doesn't matter. Like, you can't say that. Like, tell the Carolina Panthers that Luke Kuechly don't matter, right?
Right.
Tell like, you know what I'm saying? Tell the Chicago Bears that Brian Urlacher didn't matter. Tell the Ravens, who he literally transformed their defense, right? Roquan Smith, when he came there last year, right? Was that last year or year before? That he
2 years
doesn't matter.
ago.
Yeah, Fred Warner, right? Tell the 49ers, but everybody wants a Fred Warner, but nobody wants to value
Nobody,
Fred Warner.
nobody wants to find a Fred Warner, but they
Yeah.
want a Fred Warner. Like, come on, man. The linebackers, they matter, man. They matter.
Yeah, they do, DP, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because I agree with you that this is a good class. Like, even, you talk about like Bama and potentially having two with Jahad Campbell, but I remember watching Deontay Lawson,
Yeah,
and I liked him a lot, right? So it's just, and when we get into the scheme stuff, right, and maybe this is a storyline we're talking about the linebackers, that when you watch the film and you realize what these quarterbacks are doing, right, and manipulating coverages and things like that, is that you see like that part of the field, that second level, is so important. Like, you would want to have that, right? When you're doing the quarterback breakdowns and breaking down different things, you realize a lot of them are working the linebackers, right? And so if that's what they're doing, you would want to probably have a more talented guy at that position, right? And kind of value that. And I'm with you. I see so many different linebackers and just I guess types, right? That you like. And I think that's a good way to put it, that these guys fit in different schemes and can do different things. Like even Abdul Carter, right? Like in him popping off against against Ohio State, right? And and we talked about this, and this is how I truly feel, that he's a better stack backer than what Michael Parsons was also, right? Like just playing off-ball linebacker. And so that's a very versatile piece. And I tweeted that out. I'm like, this is a game that makes you think he's a top 10 pick, because he's a starting linebacker and he's a hell of an edge rusher too. So just interesting situation.
No, and at the end of the day, like, when you the RPO game, the play action game, when you have linebackers who are disciplined in their reads, right, slow until and they're just not firing downhill, just aimlessly trying to get in the backfield. Listen, this is a little bit of a throwback name, but not as throwback. But Ryan Shazier, when he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, like that dude was hell on wheels. Like it was just go all 4 quarters. And yeah, you would like that. He was one of those, just a playmaker at the second level, where it's like, listen, if they call him the blitz, he's hitting that A gap, full speed ahead, head down, battering, ramming his way through there, getting in the backfield, slicing the gaps. But also it was like, hey, when we know we're playing Tom Brady, we know we're playing Peyton Manning or Drew Brees, we need you in the middle of the field. You got to take away these slants, these crossers, these end breakers, those quick routes. And that value, like the athleticism, the versatility, the 3-down skill set, like, man, when you find a guy like that, you pay him the same way you pay a Fred Warner and Roquan. You pay those guys, man. So yeah, the linebacker class, we talked about it, I think last week with the safeties. I feel like there's no discussions about the safety class, you know what I mean, and everything like that. And I go back to it. Who's watching film? Like, what are you guys watching? Are you just watching the stuff that makes you feel good? Let me watch some of these running backs and these receivers. No, watch these other guys too, because this class has more talent than it's getting credit for. And I know it's a down year in certain spots, but it's kind of an up year in others.
Yeah, I agree, DP. And I could think I'll probably wrap it up like this, right? That if you want to continue to ignore linebackers, you're going to end up like the Dallas Cowboys, right? With a bad dude. That's the only way I could put it. We're going to wrap it up. And then we're going to transition that segment right there. That's the best way I could put it, DP. But let's keep this thing going.
We're never getting invited to Jerry's World. We're never getting invited to Jerry's World. Not with that comment.
Let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. And we on to my favorite segment that we do over here at Locked On NFL Draft. And that is Dame's Dudes, right? I put DP on the hot seat, asking if these guys are getting in the club or are they kicked out of the club. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Guys, I want to shout out my therapist real quick and tell her thank you, Miss White. Because if it wasn't for her and starting therapy back in February, I wouldn't be in the headspace that I am today, getting ready to close out the 2024 year. Therapy has changed my life, and I'm so grateful for it. But that's what this month is all about. Gratitude, gratefulness. And along with the person I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to thank enough, ourselves. Sometimes it's hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything in this crazy world. That isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some things to the people in your life, including you, yourself. If you think about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. It's time for Dames Dudes. You already know. If you don't know, I'll tell you. Keith Gibbs brings 5 prospects from week 10 on today's episode, and I gotta decide: are you in the club? You getting some drinks? You in VIP? Well, you gotta be old enough. But are you getting in the VIP, or do you gotta go back home and try again next week? Keith, let's get it going.
Let's get this thing going, man. And we're gonna start this off with a defensive lineman from North Carolina, out there in your neck of the woods, DP. Them Carolinas, K'Mon Rucker. Is he in the club? Out of the club?
Oh, he's in the club, man. Like I like K'Mon, and I'm happy he's healthy. He missed, multiple weeks, I think, after week 1, 6'2", 260. And I believe it was Jim Nagy, our guy Jim Nagy, shout out to the Senior Bowl, who tweeted out that he has, I think he said 33 and some change on the arms. Like to to be sub 6'3" with that arm length, he's got speed to power, he's got dip and bend around the edge, and coming in this week against, I think they play Florida State. Looking at his numbers, pass rush win rate 33.3. He had 7 pressures, 7 hurries, and a sack in this game. And then the week before, he had a great week as well, rushing the passer. This is a guy that, at the end of the day, I keep saying that the edge rush class is going to be fine. K'Mon Rucker, he's in the club.
All right, cool. I like that, DP. And that's a new name, right? I think that's a name that a lot of people are not aware of at this moment, right? But you watch him on film, you say, hey, this guy has talent at the end of the day. And he can be a guy that can – the question would be for him, can he bump against that top 100, top 125, right? Like day 1 or day 2, early day 3 type of football player. DP, let's keep this thing going, man. Running back from Tennessee. I have Dylan Sampson. Is he in the club, out of the club?
Oh, man, Dylan Sampson, talking about a guy who, if you want to talk about the 2026 running back class, he might be RB1 because I don't think he's coming out this year. Dylan Sampson's in the club. 27 carries, 140 yards rushing, over 5 yards per carry, 2 rushing touchdowns, averaged 2.85 yards after contact, made some guys miss. This is one of the most explosive playmakers at the running back position. But he isn't just a speed threat. He's got body control, contact balance. He runs hard. Yeah, he's one of the best running backs, and not just in the SEC, in the country. And he himself has 19 rushing touchdowns, and he hasn't missed a game without rushing for a touchdown. He's in the club.
Yeah, another young man, DP, from Louisiana, just the home of where we produce the best athletes. I just had to throw that out there. You have to shake your head like that. All right, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. We have Georgia edge rusher Jalen Walker. Is he in the club, out of the club?
I wanted to put him in this week, Keith, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm not putting my guy. He's still my guy, but he's not getting in the club. Jalen Walker, this was a weird game. I watched the tape of him rushing the passer. I think he made a couple plays off ball. I think he recovered a fumble, stuff like that, a couple tackles, but he didn't register a pressure, a hurry, or a sack in any of his pass rush reps. And this was a game, watching the reps, it just felt like he was trying to work that speed, the power rush, every single rush. And Florida's tackles were ready for it. They were able to anchor down, things like that. And I was just like, Jalen, you got more in the bag. You know what I mean? Like, you could get back there, especially when, you have it for a decent part of the game. DJ Lagway was back there, the 240-pound athlete at quarterback with his mobility and everything. But Jalen Walker, the thing I wanted to see, I just want to consistently see that production and that impact as a pass rusher. And this was one of the few games you didn't see it on tape or on the stat sheet. So he's not getting in the club this week, but he's still my guy.
All right,
I'll
cool.
keep something for him next week. I'll keep
Jalen,
something
come
to talk
holler at
about
me,
next week.
baby. Holler at me this week, right? We'll go back to DP spot next week. All right, but DP, let's keep this thing going, man. We have Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik, which this should be interesting.
No, K's not getting in this week. It was just a tough game for him. The Louisville did a great
Clemson
job,
team, right? Like you feel like they
yeah.
just like, you know how
Everybody
sometimes
but Phil Maffa.
yeah, and literally everybody, even defensively. You just felt like that team, like when you watch the game, it's like y'all just don't have it today. Like it was just
No.
they had one of those days, right? Like they picked a bad time to play bad football.
Prime time game at home at
Yep.
night. This is not the game. You're on national television. This is not the game that you squander against I think at the time was a 5-3 Louisville team. This is still a good team, but even you gave up so much in the run. Like it just was a weird game. And I was watching. I'm gonna tell you when watching the tape on it, what I saw was Cade Klubnik. The Cade Klubnik I'd hate to see. He just did not look. He was confused. Like it felt like Louisville was doing a good job, like changing the picture on him. Because if he sees it pre-snaps and it's the same thing he sees, he's been slicing it up all season. But it was times he came to the line. There was a play he completed the pass, but you could just see like he was out of sorts because like it looked like man, the too high, like 2-man high, and they snapped the ball and it was cover 4, and Cade was like almost like a deer in headlights because he just was like, this is not what I thought they were running. So then he's trying to go through his reads. He's scattered. The pressure wasn't like the O-line did a good job, but they were closing the pocket on him. And a couple of times he took his eyes down to the rush. He stopped looking at his receivers. He starts trying to be Houdini. And it was like, no, okay, just play. Like there was throws that like a couple games ago, even last week, his last game, he would have just ripped it. You know what I mean? Like even against that cover 4 look, they had a comeback route to the outside receiver on the left. And I'm like, Kate, just drill that throw. And he doesn't throw it. And he comes back and he gets it to Jake Brenningstool for a short gain. But I'm just like, he's not seeing it right now. Like it's moving fast. And then it goes back to, okay, he needs to go back to school one more year. Because there's some stuff you could tell he's not used to seeing just yet.
Yeah, I think he should, right? Like just go back one more year, like and have the year where you walk in there confident, right? Because I think he found his confidence this year, but I don't think he walked in confidently, right? And then Georgia didn't help him out week 1, right? Like that wasn't a great start to the season.
First of all, Clemson stopped scheduling Georgia week 1. It has not panned out for y'all yet. Cut it out. Leave Georgia alone.
Yeah. At least early on in the season. All right, DP, let's wrap this thing up, man. We have one guy who's on his way to doing some legendary things, potentially in college football, record-breaking things. Mr. Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State. Is he in the club, out of the club?
This is gonna surprise everybody. He is not in my club this week.
Oh, no. DP, what's wrong with?
So
I need an explanation. We got to talk about this, right? We're trying to bring people to the club that's going to get more people to get in the club. Like he's good for the brand.
He is, and he's been in the club every single week. But this game, I know he had a good game statistically.
Yeah,
man, Keith, like he had like 50 yards in the first half, and the game was a blowout. Like they already blown this team out. Like when the game was close. They had them like, I think at one point it was like 10 carries for 30 yards, but the score was 28-0, you know what I mean, against San Diego State. He didn't have his like statistical impact wasn't felt to the third quarter. Game was already out of reach. It was over. Then he just kind of padded stats, which, hey, I'm fine with. You got you in the Heisman race, so you got to pad your stats to stay in the lead or stay in that top 1, top 2 spot. But like watching the tape, I'm just like, yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw, especially early in that game. I know that they tried to, San Diego State wanted to take him away, but I'm like, when the game was a game, you didn't really have an impact. You know what I mean? Like statistically, you ran the ball, you broke like a couple runs for 7 to 8, maybe 10 yards, but they kept them bottled up. And then San Diego State quarterback throws a pick 6. Then the next drive he throws another interception. I'm like, well, this game is over. You know what I mean? It's just like. So as much as I love Ashton Jeanty, I'm like, yeah, those numbers are very hollow. So I ain't letting them in this week.
So you're saying the stats didn't tell the whole story, basically?
Nah. He didn't start doing anything to the third quarter. That game was out of reach.
That's funny.
Still my guy, though. Still my guy. Still my
All
RB1.
right, cool. Next week, man. We getting
Next week.
Ashton Genty and Jalen Walker in the club next week. DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. Like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today, and Everyday Shot for being our everydays. On tomorrow's show, guys, we got Prospect Spotlight. Who's going underneath the spotlight heading into Week 11? Wow, Week 11. The college football is already here. Not really a fan of it because that means the regular season is almost over, but we're going to do Prospect Spotlight on tomorrow's show, so come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.